Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about top tech companies and influence, so let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, do engineering blogs of software companies like Facebook and Netflix influence how software is built across the industry? Yes. Yes, they are. They influence that. It's it's actually funny because this is a secret tip you can't tell the other mid-level and junior level developers. The biggest tell for a senior versus a mid-level to a junior level experience when it comes to uh, architecture and like system design and so forth is when you can ask how to solve a problem. You ask this engineer how to solve a given problem, and then you listen to where they're getting their inspiration from. What type of architectural decisions will they make, or like what type of tooling will they pick, and so forth and so forth. And then you listen to whether or not they actually know the different ways based on experience and trial and error and actual like rational thought and reasoning what's going to be a good solution, or if they just regurgitate what they've read on these blogs. You see, the gigantic like the FAANG companies and like the top IT companies and so forth, they have a lot of investment in driving most of what's happening in IT, and that is, well, it's because it's their business. Their entire business is based around being the top IT companies, or trying to be at the very least. So they have a lot of tooling, and a lot of the services that you buy and you use as part of your own development is coming from these companies. And so, of course, they're going to have a lot of presence in the ecosystem, in the community. And so the thing that software developers do is the same thing that a lot of people do. They get influenced. Like, it's the same thing with popular trends in management. It's the same thing with TV shop or like these networks where you buy products, etc., etc. People are trying to sell you something or sell you an idea. Now, these blogs are usually very useful to look at how are other companies, because it's not just these big companies, guys, who do these sorts of things. I think I still credit the most unlikely, at least from my point of view, which should tell you something a little bit about my prejudices against an organization, and seems to be unfounded. It was here in Sweden, actually. They did a tech talk. It was for the branch of our government that handles pensions, like we have public pensions and things like that. And they are responsible for the digital systems that pay out the pensions to all these different people who have their pension being paid out. And they showed me probably one of the most inspiring concepts within it was a genius solution in terms of how to structure a good testing strategy for a high integration system. And it's funny because it was actually very similar to at another company that I had been working at, where they did a very similar sort of thing, right? So, and this is not a top IT company by any means. It's a government institution. It's as I said, it's a branch of government. And although the demo that they showed was very inspiring, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm just going to copy paste that into whatever I'm doing. But the ideas and the concepts were really, really inspiring. And then I've had other tech talks, like, guys, I can, full disclosure, most of the most useful information that I have gotten from blogs or from tech talks and so forth have never been from one of the FAANG companies. And the thing that a lot of people don't understand is that some problems might be exclusive to the sort of scale that one of the FAANG companies are dealing with, or when you're dealing with these really, really large systems. And this is why I tell software developers that until you have to understand the problem before you start reaching for a solution. Because all of these blogs, although they do inspire, it's more, in my experience, that they inspire sometimes because they have like a solid, strong idea or like a concept that is very useful. An example would be Docker and containerization. It's a gigantic concept and it doesn't necessarily come from the FAANG companies, but the idea is a trend that really stuck with the community. But then you have other ideas that are probably not going to stick so well with the community, and then you have other things that sort of, well, we call them sponsored content. And what is sponsored content if, for example, GCP, AWS, or Azure and so forth, when they show you new cool ways of working with their cloud infrastructure and so forth? It's sort of mixing education with publicity, if that makes sense. It's the same. It's how any company does it, like where they do. It's actually a little bit funny. I think that this model is somewhere else. I can't recall ever seeing it. But if you really think about it, all those certifications that you can pay for, you're literally paying to be educated in a cloud provider's platform. You're paying to get certified by them in their products. So that's a really nice business model. I'm going to pay you so that you will teach me how to use your product. And it works to a certain degree because they have most of the IT world and so forth in the idea that cloud is better, etc., etc. And I'm not saying it's not. It's just it's an interesting way of thinking about it, and that's why I think that you should start looking at these blogs as just that, as a way for you to get inspiration for how you can apply things in your own life, in your own work. But the thing that you will watch out for is that usually, as I said, the more mature software developers, they know when a full-fledged service mesh with Kubernetes is the right way to go, and when it's fine to just have 2 sleepy VMs for a single application, type of like a small application or something like that. They don't get persuaded as easily as a lot of companies are, and I always argue that you can tell a lot about the maturity of the software developer, the way that the company is doing work, etc., etc., based on the tools that they use and how well those tools fit their use case. You often find, and I've seen some horror shows, guys, where you take a concept such as, say, microservices or service meshes, or like it can be anything, right? And they take it and you apply it in a way that actually completely destroys the productivity of the teams and the company. You can over-engineer your system to the point where the cost of maintaining it is so high that you basically cripple the entire organization. Seen it more than once. So what I want you to take away from this is that yes, these engineering blogs by the top IT companies, if you didn't think about that, most of these practices, Agile, OKRs, etc., so it's not just tech guys. A lot of that stuff is coming from these sorts of companies, and so they have a lot of presence within the IT community. Thing that is worth knowing, as I said, is that just because something is coming from one of these companies, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good fit for you. And that's where it gets really important for you to have a bit of personal maturity, to really understand the problems that you are dealing with, and understanding this fundamental truth, guys. The fundamental truth is that your goal is always to try to find the simplest solution that will still scale and work for your situation. And that is something that people forget a lot, because they get very hyped up about the idea without truly understanding when this idea is a good idea and when it's not a good idea. Because, as I said, microservices or service meshes or whatever, like these large-scale systems, they're a really good idea if you have the sort of scale where that makes sense. But for your own little sleepy API with maybe a few endpoints, that's severe overkill. It's not really necessary. But only when you are mature enough to understand your own problem and really understanding what a good solution looks like, will you be able to tell the difference. And that, my friend, is when you are going to get my sign of, yeah, this person is probably getting to be a senior. That's when you get my stamp. Have a great day.